Welcome all, welcome to this lab of advanced Java programming. Today we'll be revising some Java fundamentals and today we'll be seeing how to basically handle exceptions. Okay, so let me first show the disclaimer. Okay, so welcome all and let's start with the revision of the core Java. So in core Java today we'll see how to handle exceptions. Okay, so mm, okay, this is the exception demo. So check this out. Here what we are doing is, here basically, okay, this is the last one. Let me take you through exception 01 first. That would be much better. So this exception 01 in this program, what I've done is, check this out. In this main method, I'm calling a method which is called as method 1. So this exception 1 class has got three static variables. Okay, A, B, and C. So these are class variables. What are these? Since these are static, right? These three are called as what? The class variables. Okay. Why? Because they belong to class. And how can we access them if they are class variable? We can access them like this. Exception dot A. In this way we can access them, right? So now what we are doing is, we are declaring three class variables inside this exception 01 class. And in this method 1, which is again a static method, obviously we'll use a static method in order to use the static variables. Okay, right? We don't need to make any object of this exception 01 class. In this static method, what we are doing is, we are assigning value n to A. We are not assigning any value to B. Okay, we are only assigning value to A. And then we are assigning value to C by saying A divided by B. Suppose if we assign over here also, say B is also equal to 10, we say A equal to B equal to 10. So we assign 10 to A and B. And then we divide A by B and then assign the result to C. And if everything goes fine, then obviously there won't be any exception and this catch won't get executed. So the control, after completing this, the control will come over here. Where? On this line. Basically print method 1. Or we can simply say method 1 executed. Method 1 executed. Okay. So what happens ideally? Ideal is something like this main executes first. Here the control enters. It goes to this method 1. From here, the control jumps to this part. Here it enters and executes this part. And from there, since there is no problem, it returns back this line. Simply we can say this particular line gets executed. Okay, so this line gets executed. So this is the sequence of control going on, and then control exits out of me, and so our program execution ends. Here the program execution ends. Okay, understand that? But so let's run this out. Let's run this particular part, and let's say run file. So you can see what does it print is, first it prints that method 1 executed and then 1. What is that 1? See, this method 1 executed gets printed from this method call, and this 1 gets executed because of this system.out.println. because of this part, this one gets executed, gets printed. Why? Because the static variables are, the A and B have been assigned value 10, and 10 divided by 10 is 1. So C is equal to 1. You see that? So that's a normal case. But what if we don't give this value 10 to B? So what will be the default value now if we don't give any value to B? Right? We have given this A as value what? 10. And to B, what value do we give? It's a big question mark. For C, we have the operation A divided by B, right? So now by default, B and C's value will be, when the control comes over here, all the value of A, B, C are 0. Values of A, B, C are 0 because by default static variables have by default 0 value. Okay. So when you say A equal to 10 and then you say A divided by B, so it is equivalent to saying 10 divided by 0. So obviously it will create an exception. So what will happen now in this case? So this is not an ideal case. So control enters in this main method. It goes to this method 1. Okay. And it enters over here. And at this part, it gets jumped out. And the control goes from here to this catch part. Previously, the control used to go from here to this part, right? But now that is not the case. The control is going in this part. Okay. So what would have happened is previously the control would have gone from here to this part, which would have printed method 1 executed, and then it would have gone to this println. Okay, I forgot this println statement is there. So this would have been the ideal condition, that control would have gone in this way if there would have been some proper value to B, right? But that is not the case right now. Right now the B's value is 0. So this is equivalent to saying 10 divided by 0, right? Which is obviously not possible. So it will generate an exception. So for what happens from here, the control jumps and the exception is thrown and it is being caught in this P variable. So we print that P out of here. And then again this gets printed because the exception has been caught. Otherwise, what would have happened? Otherwise, if it would not have been caught, then it would have directly jumped out of this method. And from here also, instead of going at this location, from here only it would have jumped back outside. You see, this statement would not have been executed. This statement would not have been executed. That would be the case. Okay. So right now, since we are handling the exception, the statement gets executed. Okay. So let me just run this file. And there it is. You can see that this arithmetic exception gets printed. Okay. Then it says method 1 executed and 0. You see that? So this is the message given by the printing the exception. Okay, printing the exception object. We'll see how to make our own message or our own exceptions later on. Okay, so understand how it is important to catch and how much it's important to use try catch to in order to catch an exception, right? What if we don't do this? Let me show you. If I comment this part, if there is no try catch, then what would have happened? Check that out. So here you can see that the output has come in red color. It means the execution had stopped abruptly. This is not the output given by program, but this is the output given by the Java compiler. Okay. Or the Java, sorry, not even by Java compiler. This is the output given by the Java interpreter, not the Java C command, but the Java command. Okay, this is the output given by the Java command. So what does it do? It shows that there is an exception in thread main. Yes, obviously all the methods have a thread running through it. So the main method has a thread called main running through it. Okay. And this is the exception which is getting printed. And then it shows from where does it get generated. It generated from the package myapp01 class exception01 method 1 and from line number 10. And who called line number 10? On line number 18 there was a call. So you can see on line number 18 there is a call which goes to method 1, and in that method 1 on line number 10 you can see this line number 10, right? At this line number 10 the exception gets thrown. So this is abnormal execution. Okay, and what we did before was a normal execution. Why? Because we handled the error. We handled the error efficiently and we were able to do what? We were able to give our own message and also continue our program execution. So that's the best part. Okay. So that is exception 01. Example of how to handle exceptions. Okay. Then, okay. Before we go ahead, let me give this code to you people so that you people can access it. Okay, so this is the code that I'm giving you people, and it will get expired in, let's say, 8 hours. So let's create a context. And this is the link, guys. Okay, you can take this code and run it out. Fine, try to run it, guys. Okay. Okay, let's go to next program and let's see basically what are other things associated with exceptions, right? So the things that are the the keywords and those things that are associated with exceptions are basically these. First one is that we have seen is try and catch, right? So these are the, and obviously finally, right? So these are the three statements associated with exceptions. There are some other keywords associated with it, right, which are specifically throw and throws. So can you tell me what is the difference between these two? Yes. What's the biggest difference between these two? So basically the difference between these two is what we will see in this program. The main difference we will see in this program, difference between the behavior. Okay. Fine. So what we'll do is here in this main method, we are calling the same method 1 again. This exception 2 also has got three static variables a, b, c. This method 1 also has got the same code. A is equal to 10, c is equal to a divided by b. Okay, and method 1 is now handled in between try catch. It's being called, so there is no try catch over here. We have shifted the try catch over here. Okay, and then we are printing c, and here we will say method 1 executed. Okay, so let me run this file. Okay, so what has happened over here, check this out. The exception occurred and directly then c was out, value of c was printed. So something is missing as compared to the output of first program. There is something that is missing in this output, and that output that is missing is, check this out, what is missing. I'll run this file and you'll come to know what is missing. So here in this program 1 that we saw, okay, in this program 1 basically you have this exception message getting printed, and then method 1 executed, that was getting printed, right, which is not getting printed in this program. Why? You see the difference between the code? Yes, here in main we have got try catch, in which we are calling method 1. So from here the control goes to this method 1, this is getting executed, and from here directly from this line the control gets thrown out, and it does not go to this location after method 1. No, it gets thrown out and it gets caught over here, executes in this part. Okay, so that's why this line does not get executed. This particular line does not get executed. Okay, previously what had happened, previously we handled the exception in this method 1 itself. We handled the exception, so even if the control would have been thrown out from here, it would have been caught over here, and then after that the statement would have got executed. Okay, particular statement would have got executed, but that is not the case in this. Understand? See how by putting the try catch we can basically change the method or execution of the method or execution of a particular program. And now let's see the difference between throw and throws. Okay, so suppose this b was assigned value 10, so obviously it will now work properly, right? It will run properly, and it will, you will see that method 1 executed and output is 1, right? It says method 1 executed and the output is of this c is 1. Obviously this 10 divided by 10 would result into 1 and c would get printed, right? But the thing is, now let me make use of something called as throw. Okay, so I say throw new exception, and in this new exception I'll say this is my exception. Okay, what do I say? This is my exception. Now see, it is giving me an error over here. Why? It says, the IDE says that there is an unreported exception object of type exception, and it must be caught or declared to be thrown. What should be done? It must be caught or it should be declared to be thrown. Okay. So if we are using try catch over here, if we are using this try catch over here, right, try and this catch. Let me use it over here. So now there won't be any error. Why? Because since I am throwing it, I'm also catching it. So the program execution will be okay. So the compiler gets to know that, okay, the program execution is not going to get hampered because of this part, because of this line number 12. Okay. And if we now run this particular program, then you will get to see the same kind of output. The only difference is method 1 gets executed and the exception also gets caught and the value of C is get printed. All these three things get executed. Okay. This shows method 1 got executed. This shows that exception got caught, and this shows that the division operation happened properly. Okay. But what if you don't do this try catch part? What if we remove this? Yes. Then obviously it will give you error. It will not allow you to compile only. So what we will do, we will say throws. Now here we will use throws. We say throws an exception. This method can throw an exception. So it will not handle it. So since you are not handling it by using try catch, what you are doing is you are becoming free of your responsibility to handle that exception. And you are saying that my method 1 will not execute or will not handle the exception. It's not its responsibility. But now it's the responsibility of the calling method. The method that calls this method has to handle the exception. Why? Because it has explicitly declared that it throws exception. What is done? This method 1 has explicitly declared in its declaration that it throws an exception. The calling method has to take care. So see, that's the difference. This throw new exception will make a new object and throw it out, which has to be caught somewhere. And this throws keyword declares that a particular method is surely going to throw an exception, or there is a full possibility that this method might throw an exception. Okay, either it surely throws an exception or there is a possibility that it might throw. It's not necessary that always it throws. So if we don't use this line, then also it's okay. We can declare it like this, throws exception. Any method can declare that it can throw an exception. Why? Because obviously it is not handling the exception. That's why. So the calling method has to make sure that it calls the method in between a try catch, or it can even declare that. Okay. So what we are doing is we are throwing this new exception over here, and it will get caught over here. Okay. So now basically the sequence of execution would be something like this. How? What would be the sequence of execution? First the control enters over here. main method. It goes to this method 1. So from here, it executes this part. Okay. And then from this throw new exception, it gets thrown from here, and it gets caught over here in this catch part. So this gets printed, and then the control goes to the next part. So this println works, this println works, and this println works. You see that? This println also will get executed, this will also get executed, this will also get executed. So the output will be similar to the first one, the previous one output. So here also you see the output is similar. What does it do? It executes the method. It shows the exception and prints 1. Now the thing is that what if we don't use try-catch over here? Check it out. Let me just comment it out. So I comment this try-catch code. So it says that there is no try-catch. So this method 1 is declaring that it throws exception. So obviously that method 1 needs to be called inside a try-catch. Otherwise that will also give you an exception. And that will not allow you to even, to basically to compile that. And here also it says that there is an unreported exception object of type exception, which must be caught or declared to be thrown. So how do we basically handle it? So there is one more method. Either one way we did it is to handle it in try-catch, right? Or we might make the main method also get relieved of this responsibility by declaring it as that it also throws exception. So now it won't give errors. Now this code will not give error. Even though you don't have try-catch surrounding it, it won't give you error, because we have now declared that this main is also able to throw an exception. So this method 1 says it can throw an exception. It is being called in main. Main also says that it can throw an exception. So if any exception throws, the method that is calling main has to handle it. And who is calling the main? Obviously your JRE is calling the main, right? Java Runtime Environment is calling the main. So obviously it will not handle it and it will display it directly. So if we now run this, you can see it is not handling it. This method 1 executed, that gets printed because it was printed before throwing the exception. And you can see that exception here is saying that there is an exception in thread main. And this is the exception type. This is my exception. And it occurred on line number 10, and the main call was made on line number 16. You can see that on this line number 10, it has occurred. See that? And the call to this method was from line number 16. Okay. So if you go ahead, here you can see the call is on line number 16. Okay. So that is what is the difference between throw and throws. Okay. So now if we remove throws out of here, then obviously we will have to handle this method inside try-catch. So you see, there are many methods that we might be using, third-party APIs or some other, libraries that we might be using, and in that you might be seeing that some method always gives an error even if there is no issue. Why? Because it is declared that that method might throw an exception. A specific type of exception might be thrown. So you might have to handle that specific type of exception. Okay, understand? Okay, so that is a simple exception thing. Okay, and now let's see this exception demo. Here what we have done is, here we have created our own exception by declaring my exception class, which is extending exception class. So it is something like this. You have an exception class. Okay, and you are inheriting from it. This class is inheriting from it. Okay, this is my exception. Okay, so what it adds is, it adds a variable called detail, and a value a is assigned to the detail whenever that my exception object is created. So in that constructor we have put this code, and there is a toString method which basically returns a string called my exception and the value of detail whenever this object of this my exception class is specifically put in println, or whenever used with any string operations. Okay, that object is created using this toString method. So check this out. In this exception demo, what do? We have a compute method, a static compute method. Okay. In that, we pass some value a, and we check which was first print with that called compute with value a. And then we check if the value of a is greater than 10, then throw new my exception and normally exit out of it. Okay. So in main, you can see we call this compute 1. So what happens? Right now the control goes over here. From compute 1, the control goes over here. Everything gets executed fine because value of a, that is this 1, is not greater than 10. So this exception does not get thrown. Okay. What happens? Control comes back and goes to next statement. So for next statement, again, when this statement executes, what happens? Control goes back to this compute. This gets executed, this gets executed, and this gets executed. So from this part, the control gets thrown away. And it directly goes to this catch part. This line does not get executed. Line number 19 does not get executed because we have thrown a new exception. Okay. So that 20, compute 20. Why? Because the 20 value of 20 is greater than 10. Okay. So it will obviously print this compute called compute 20, but it will not print this normal exit part. And see that? So let me run this file. Check this out. Here what has happened? Here we called the method like compute 1. So it printed call compute 1 and normal exit, right? Then we called compute 20. So it printed call compute 20, but there was no normal exit. There was an exception thrown. So it was caught. You can see my exception 20. It says caught my exception 20. Okay. So that is how this thing works. Here we are catching my exception only, not an exception. And here you can catch multiple exceptions also. You can say catch exception E. Okay. You can say catch exception E, and they are printing it out. So instead of this throw new my exception, if you throw an exception, okay, let's make this value as a, throw new exception. So here you will have to declare that it throws an exception, not my exception. Now if we run this, so you can see that over here it says call compute 1 normal exit, then called compute 20 and caught this exception with value 20. This was the messages. Okay, so what happens is here we are catching either my exception or exception. Obviously here it is throwing an exception, so it will get caught over here only. Since exception is superclass of my exception, here it will not get caught. So to make sure that whenever you put multiple catch after try, okay, then the hierarchy of the class should be reversed. So you see my exception is a subclass of exception class. So it is coming first. It should be caught first. And exception is a superclass, so it should be caught in the end. So if we do like this, if we catch this particular part, if I take this code over here, it will give you an error. Why? Check this out. What is the error? It says that error says that exception object of type my exception has already been caught. You see that? How is that possible? Check this out. I just comment this part, and now from here I throw my exception. Okay, from here what do? I say throw new my exception. Okay, throw new my exception and a, and this part will comment out. Okay, so this will create a my exception object. Okay, and then it will get printed. But now here we are saying catch exception, so that will get caught. That's not an issue. Why? Because it is something saying like this. See, check this out. It is something like saying like this: exception e is equal to new my exception, this value of a. Okay, it is something saying like this. This is what is happening when the exception gets thrown and it gets caught over here. It is almost equivalent to saying that you generate a new exception and it is assigned to it, and that is assigned to a variable of type exception, which is of superclass. So this is object polymorphism. We have already seen this, right? What is object polymorphism? We have already seen this in lecture, right? So that's what right now it is happening. The object polymorphism is happening. Okay. So if I run this, it will obviously run. Run this file. There it is. You can see called compute exit, right? Then what do? We said call compute 20, it threw my exception, but now it is saying caught my exception. That value or that thing is not getting printed, you see, because that we have, specifically not given that part. You see that? So that's the main difference, you see. In this we created our own. So we learned various things about exceptions today. What did we learn? We learned how to handle it in try catch, right? And yes, one more thing we forgot, that is finally. So if you use finally, then obviously it will get printed every time. It will get printed even if there is no exception, it will get printed. Finally printed. Okay, if I assign b and if I run this, so obviously now it will have not any error because a and b's value is 10, a divided with b is equal to 1. Then also you can see that finally got printed, finally got executed. You see, method 1 executed 1. So no problem over here. Then also finally gets executed. You see that? And if there is a problem, then also it gets executed. Yes. So if we don't assign this 10 to B, right, and then we run this file, what happens? Check this out. It has got an exception. And finally also gets printed. Method 1 gets executed. It says, because this method 1 gets executed, this line is after try catch, and then 0 gets printed. You see that? So we learned various things today. We learned how to handle try catch, what is finally, then what is the difference between throw and throws, throw and throws, and how to declare your own exception, right? How to make a toString method for it to get printed when you call that exception object inside a println method, and how to declare multiple catch statements. Okay, so if I remove this, this will give me error, but if the same thing is taken above of this part, then it does not give any error. You see, so we saw how to declare multiple catch statements and how to maintain hierarchy of exceptions in that catch statements. Okay, so there is a lot of things we learned today, guys. Okay, so let me stop the recording. I'll give you this code in context, and then you can perform it out. And if you have any issues, we can have discussion right now. Okay.